It's over. How BRICS Pay and the Sahel Alliance just changed Africa forever. Listen closely. If you are watching the news today and you think what is happening in Ukraine, in the Sahel, or in the BRICS summits is just politics, you are missing the single greatest opportunity for Black liberation in the last 60 years. We are living through a great reshuffle. The global order that has dictated African poverty since the Berlin Conference of 1884 is fracturing. The tectonic plates of power are shifting, and for the first time in centuries, the cracks are wide enough for Africa to step through, not as a beggar, but as a titan. Welcome to My Blackness 100, the channel that projects Black excellence and Black empowerment like no other. Like, share, comment, and hit the notification button so you don't miss other videos. I'm not here to give you hope, I'm here to give you strategy. Today, we are going to wargame the current geopolitical map. We are going to look at 4 specific battlegrounds: the BRICS payment revolution, the Russia-NATO fracture, the Sahel Sovereignty Alliance, and the sleeping giant of the AFCFTA. This is not a history lesson. This is a blueprint for how African nations can leverage the chaos of the developing world to secure rapid, irreversible development. Welcome to the strategy session. Money game, BRICS Pay, and financial sovereignty. Let's start with the weapon that has kept the global South on its knees, the US dollar. For decades, if Ghana wanted to buy tractors from India, or if Kenya wanted to buy fertilizer from Russia, they had to convert their currency into US dollars, routed through a bank in New York, and then send it to the seller. This gave the West sanction power over every single transaction. It was a chokehold. But look at what is happening with BRICS right now. I know you've heard the rumors about a BRICS currency, and you've seen the recent threats from the US administration about 100% tariffs on anyone who drops the dollar. That is the noise. I want you to look at the signal. The real revolution isn't a new paper bill with Putin and Xi's face on it. The revolution is BRICS Pay and the multi-currency system. As of 2025, we are seeing the rollout of decentralized, blockchain-based payment rails that allow member nations to settle trade in their own currencies, completely bypassing the SWIFT system. This is critical. It means an African nation can sell resources to China in yuan or to India in rupees without Washington ever seeing the transaction. Why does this matter for development? Because it kills the risk premium of doing business in Africa. Currently, African currencies crash because they're pegged to the dollar's mood swings. If the US Fed raises rates, the Nigerian Naira or the Ghanaian Cedi bleeds. But if African nations pivot to this alternative platform, we diversify our risk. We stop importing American inflation. We create a commodities-backed financial reality where our gold, our cobalt, and our oil determine our worth, not the credit rating of a bank in Wall Street. The strategy here is aggressive financial non-alignment. African central banks must stop hoarding dollars and start hoarding utility. We need to join these alternative rails, not to become subservient to China, but to create a bidding war for our trade routes. If the West wants our business, they must lower the cost of capital. If the East wants our resources, they must offer technology transfers via these frictionless payment systems. The monopoly is over. We have options, and in geopolitics, options are power. The new Cold War, Russia versus NATO. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the Russia-NATO conflict. The media wants you to pick a side. They want you to say Russia is the savior or the West is the defender of democracy. As a strategist, I am telling you pick neither. Use both. This fracture in relations between Moscow and the West is the greatest leverage Africa has had since the 1960s. The West is terrified of losing access to African critical minerals, the lithium, cobalt, and uranium needed for their green energy transition and military-industrial complex. Russia, on the other hand, is desperate for diplomatic legitimacy and new markets to bypass sanctions. This is where we flip the script. Look at the Cairo Forum in late 2025. Russia is offering security packages, arms, training, and nuclear energy technology without the moral strings attached by the West, like LGBTQ rights or specific governance models. The strategy for African leaders must be strategic transactionalism. We do not need to agree with Russia's invasion of Ukraine to benefit from their desperation. We can say to NATO, "You want us to distance ourselves from Moscow? Fine, then cancel the debt. Build the refinery here, not a loan, an investment." Simultaneously, we say to Russia, "You want our diplomatic support at the UN? Fine, we need nuclear power plants in Burkina Faso and railway infrastructure in Mali. Build it." We have seen this work already. When African leaders refused to condemn Russia en masse at the UN, suddenly Western dignitaries who hadn't visited the continent in decades were flying to Accra, Dhaka, and Nairobi, checkbooks in hand. We must stop being the battleground for their proxy wars and start being the auction house. We are the prize, and the price of the prize just went up. The Sahel Uprising, the AES Confederation. This leads us to the most exciting development on the ground, the AES, Alliance of the Sahel States, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. The mainstream media calls this the coup belt. They call it instability. I call it the sovereignty lab. These three nations have done the unthinkable. They have kicked out French troops. They have expelled American drone bases. They have formally withdrawn from ECOWAS, which they viewed as a puppet of Western interests. And now they're discussing a confederation. Why is this a development strategy? Because for the first time, these nations are prioritizing security sovereignty over economic convenience. For decades, the Sahel was kept in a state of managed chaos. Terrorism justified the presence of foreign troops, but the terrorism never ended. The resources, gold and uranium, kept flowing out to France while the people remained poor. The AES is breaking that cycle. By pooling their military resources, they are creating a security architecture that is actually responsive to their threats. But the economic implication is even bigger. They're openly discussing leaving the CFA franc. This is the nuclear option of African finance. The CFA franc has been a tool of monetary repression, forcing these nations to keep their reserves in the French treasury. If the AES succeeds in launching a new currency, or even a basket currency backed by their immense gold reserves, they prove that neocolonialism can be dismantled. The strategy for the rest of Africa is to protect this experiment. Coastal nations like Ghana, Togo, and Benin must not sanction the AES, they must facilitate them. These landlocked Sahel nations need access to ports. If we blockade them on behalf of Western powers, we are cutting our own throats. If we integrate them, we create a new economic bloc that links the resource-rich interior to the global market on African terms. The AES is the pilot program for African dignity. If they rise, we all rise. The internal engine, AFCFTA, and the Guided Trade Initiative. Everything I just said, BRICS, Russia, the Sahel, is about how we deal with the outside world. But none of it matters if we don't fix the inside. This brings us to the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AFCFTA. I know trade agreements sound boring, but listen to me. The AFCFTA is the only thing that can turn us into a superpower. Right now, intra-African trade is pathetic, around 15 to 17%. Europe trades 69% with itself. Asia trades 59% with itself. We are buying our own neighbors' goods from Europe at a markup. It is madness. The Guided Trade Initiative, which launched recently, is the proof of concept. We are finally seeing Kenyan tea going to Ghana and Egyptian tiles going to Cameroon, free tariff. Here is the geopolitical play, industrialization by substitution. As the world splits into blocks, West versus East, supply chains are going to break. We saw it during COVID.
We are seeing it with the Red Sea crisis. Europe will not be able to supply us with everything anymore. China might be blocked by sanctions. This is the moment for African manufacturing to step in. If Nigeria builds a refinery like Dangote, it shouldn't just supply Nigeria, it should supply the entire West African bloc. If South Africa makes cars, they should be driving on the streets of Cairo. The strategy here is regional value chains. We stop exporting raw cocoa to Switzerland and buying back chocolate. We process the cocoa in Ghana, wrap it in packaging made in Nigeria, and ship it to Ethiopia free tariff. We use the geopolitical chaos as a shield. While the giants are fighting, we build our own internal market. A market of 1.4 billion people is big enough to sustain its own industries.
We don't need to beg for access to the American market if we can dominate the African market. The window is open. So, let's bring it all together. The world is entering a period of high volatility. The old masters are distracted. The dollar is wobbling. NATO is overextended. The Sahel is rebelling. For the timid, this is a time of fear, but for the strategist, this is the golden hour. 1. We use BRICS Pay to sanitize our trade from Western sanctions and control. 2. We use the Russia-NATO rift to auction our loyalty to the highest bidder, securing infrastructure and debt cancellation. 3. We support the AES as they break the psychological and financial chains of the colonial past. 4. And we aggressively build the AFCFTA to ensure that when the dust settles, we aren't dependent on any of them. We are not developing nations anymore. We are pivotal states. The balance of power in the 21st century will be decided by where Africa places its weight. It is time we stopped apologizing for our interests. It is time we played the game to win. If you believe in this vision of a sovereign, strategic Africa, smash that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to wake up. I'll see you in the comments. This is My Blackness 100. Let's build Black excellence and Black empowerment together.